Hello, everyone. Please take a seat. We're going to get started. I hope you are on the right session. So we're going to kickstart on the side session on converging indicators and creating standards for regenerative agriculture. For those that do not know me, I'm Stefania Vanzini. I work for the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, and I am passionate about the topic of harmonizations and creating consensus on indicators. So you'll hear more about it today. Please take a seat. Okay, good. So let's get started. First of all, maybe very briefly as an introduction, I think you heard it this morning, so we don't need to spend too much time on it, on why we need convergence on indicators. I'm going to fast track it very fast, but you know that our current agriculture and food system is broken, and it's causing 12.7 trillion of negative externalities. If we really want to move to a system where we move from practice-based to results-based management model, and so if we want to reward farmers for the data they're collecting and the ecosystem services, the results they're seeing on the ground, the convergence on a core set of indicators, on a shared impact monitoring framework, we can call it however we want, is definitely key. So I'm very pleased today to be here with my two distinguished guests. So I'm here with Anne Trombini, the Managing Director from Pour une Agriculture du Vivant. Hello, Anne.
Hello.
And I'm here with Adrien Delmalray, who is the co-founder of Genesis. Yeah. Hi, Adrien. Thank you very much for coming. So we're gonna, in this short session, we're gonna make a state on what is the state of convergence. So where do we stand on the convergence and ultimately also the unlock of key indicators that help us understand and measure regenerative agriculture. Maybe, Anne, I'll start with you. Where do you see the state of convergence? Are we actually getting there? Are we aligning on core indicators that we want to reward farmers, measure and reward farmers for?
Yes, there is a lot of progress. In the last 6 years, we saw with the previous roundtable that there is consensus emerging, especially on the outcomes first, but also on the agronomic principles. So that is really a good thing because there is no more debate really about what is regenerative agriculture. However, there is still debate on how you measure it depending on your needs, and that's for me, the key issue is that we have lots of needs and usages different depending on which actors you're talking to. Today, the corporates are looking for measurement of outcomes, such as carbon, biodiversity, etc., for their reporting, especially. Finance is looking for also some outcomes, but not always the same. And when you're going to the field, and that is the main issue, you need to address how you can support farmers in their soil management practices and in driving the transition. And basically today, for me, the big issue that remains is how you connect the dots between different frameworks that will help to answer and to meet everyone's needs. So basically, very concretely, how you connect frameworks based on soil management practices to frameworks based on outcomes. And this is the main issue so that we can create the dialogue between everyone and create the cooperation. And that's why today in France we work on helping especially the farming actors to drive this transition. And we see when you talk with the farmer that you need to have a discussion about their practices, their day-to-day practices. You can't talk to them about carbon and biodiversity. This is not practical enough. So we created the Regeneration Index, which is a tool that allows them to understand their system, their agronomic performance, and then to be able to build a progress path. And us, as a third party, we analyze those data collected in the farm and translated, traduce it into outcomes for the reporting of corporates and finance. So we can connect the dots, but yeah, basically you cannot have one common framework for everybody. You need to address the different needs and create the transition between them.
No, thank you, Anna. I think this is such an important point that Anne was highlighting here. You know, data is a decision-making tool, and what we're understanding now is that data at farm level for farmers to allow to make the right decisions is they sometimes need different data points. That when we are looking at if a value chain actor wants to invest in the resilience of their supply chains, they usually are looking at sometimes from a risk perspective, from what are my physical risks in my supply chains, and they need aggregated data at what we can call sometimes a supply shed level. So I think that's a very important point. And Adrien, if I turn to you, because I know Genesis is working a lot with corporates, and so I think it's interesting to hear from your side on what is the state of convergence, of course, if you think in consensus among corporate players, and why do corporates need data, and how maybe also answering to Anne what she was saying about the different levels from farm level to supply shed level. And I think you were even brought a visual, so you might want to reference it to it later.
It's an example of what we do with Moët and Hennessy. Yes, exactly. When we talk about convergence, I think there's something good that we are not focusing only on climate now. And I think there's a large convergence that we have many issues to address. We need to tackle several challenges. So like biodiversity, water, pollution, and also climate. And that's the goal of Regenerative. So that's really interesting to see that if you are talking about the TNFD, the CSRD, if you talk about the SBTI, but also SBTN, there's, I think, a convergence that we need to have all this goal, this environmental goal. As you said before, at Genesis, we are specialized in soil health. So we measure soil health since 5 years everywhere in the world. Not everywhere, but in more than 15 countries now. And now we are not only expert on soil health, but also on external biodiversity that we measure also. But why we began by soil health? Because the soil has many interests. At first, when you measure soil, you know who is managing the soil, is what we say. You know who is managing, who is owning the soil. So it's a level of action. You can act at the soil level, at the farm level. So that's really important to look at the soil. The second reason is that the soil has, when you improve your soil health, okay, you have environmental impact, but you improve also the resilience of your farm. So you have an economical impact for your farmers. That's really important, that's what we say. And the soil, through the soil, when you measure the soil, you can address many challenges, like biodiversity when you measure the soil, because you know that more than 25% of the biodiversity is in the soil. You can address climate challenge, because soil is a carbon sink. There's the pollution subjects and also the water. So through the soil, I think you can have a large impact on environment. So that's why we are focusing on soil. And when we say that, okay, how you measure soil, how you have data, strong data about soil, you must be accurate and reliable on soil. It's really important. And that's why for Genesis, it's really important to say that when you measure soil, you must have physical, chemical, and biological indicators. That's really important. If you want to address all the challenges that I said before, economical aspect, if you want to be a level of action, if you want to accelerate the transition, you must have really accurate and reliable measurements in the field. So I want to say something. So be aware of framework who want to be really efficient or who want to be cost effective and who risk to miss their targets, because the target is to change agriculture to help farmers. And if you have too simple framework for Regenag, I think you will miss the targets, and that's really, really important.
That's a very good tension that I hear also here. It's about, the cost of measurement, and first of all, not be on the shoulders of the farmers. And as you said, it's probably it is a very strong tension on simplification and trying to find proxies and the complexities of how to measure soils. And Adrien, but I thought it was interesting to hear, just because you brought a visual example here of how do we take farm level data and how do we aggregate it to be a decision-making tool for corporates to understand how their investments are profiting.
As I said before, you need to have reliable measurements on soil. So reliable, it's costly. Okay, it's expensive. That's right. And if you have only one parcels to measure for a farmer, it's too expensive. But we will talk, I think, later about that. But we don't measure everything. We have a statistical approach, and we measure some parcel in some vineyards. Here it's an example of what we do with Hennessy. So since 2 years, we have measured more than 10 maisons and 23 vineyards. So as you can see, it could be in the United States, Argentina, Brazil, France, of course, but also India, Australia. And the first goal was to see how is the resilience of the soil. So as you can see, the global resilience, it's between 0 to 100. The global resilience of the vineyards is 59. It's quite good, it's fair. So, and you can see that you have reliable, through soil health measurements, you have reliable metrics on the part of soil in good health. So here, 51%. You can have reliable metrics on carbon also, reliable metrics on biodiversity. It's the part of area who are good for life. Say that like that, and you can see how your water stock is in all the vineyards. It's an average of all the vineyards because you have a lot of difference between some of them, and that's really interesting. So, and after you can see also when you make correlation between some practices, you can see how some practices can impact this kind of metrics. And I think that's the link between practices and outcomes, and that's really important. When you have a good practices, you know some good practices, and that's what you do with l'indice de régénération with PADV, yeah. We need to see, okay, if I try to engage a new practice in my farm, or if I try to engage one practice at the corporate level, because corporate, they can't change everything. Okay, which one is the best if I want to have an impact? I think we are in a really special period, okay, we are facing many economical challenges, okay? It's not the best period. And we need to help the CSO now. If we want to have some sustainable project, Regenerative project, we need to help the CSO, and we need to give them some outcomes, some return on investment, because they have invested a lot since years. They have invested in time, they have invested in money, and now, if we want to have this kind of project, we have to help CSO and to give them the metrics, the return on investment, of their engagement, of their commitments.
Good, and I would love to know then how you do that. But before, and also trying to engage the audience here, I would love to know, I'm going to come to you very quickly, because I would love to know by a show of hands how many think that we are mature on the convergence of metrics. But I just wanted to summarize it for those that maybe were not completely listening. So what I heard now talk about from Adrien and Anne is that there is emerging consensus on the principles, the agroecological principles that are so key in shifting our agricultural practices. There is an emerging consensus on the fact that if we want to transform agriculture, it's a holistic approach. We need to measure the environmental and the socioeconomic outcomes, and especially here flagging also farmer profitability as a key metric for farmers. And then, as you said so rightly so, Anne, the it is very context specific and place based, and so the adoption of key practices and maybe key guiding practices like covering soil, minimum soil disturbance, limiting chemicals. We heard the diversity. We heard a couple of those. They are very place based, and so they will happen at that level. I think that's where consensus is, and we heard also from the previous panel where now consensus needs to be built is on the actual indicators. And why we need that is that because that is what will unlock funding, unlock on one side financing, and as you said, also unlock probably the valorization for companies. If voluntary or mandatory reporting frameworks, for example, asked for these indicators to be reported on, that's where we would see then that famous return on investment from CSOs that you're talking about. And for that reason, I really encourage, as the World Business Council here, we did for the past 2 years. An effort to drive that convergence, not to create a new framework, but just effectively to see what is the state of convergence on these indicators. And guess what? There are 10 key indicators that are emerging across companies. We engaged over 50 companies and 33 partners who are working with approximately 1,100 companies. So we can say over 1,100 companies, there is convergence on 10 key core indicators. And I think this is important to know and state. We're getting there. We're probably not there, but just to engage briefly the audience before we go to before we kickstart also the second part. How many of you think that there is a strong convergence today on some of the core indicators that you are maybe measuring at farm level, or that you're asking to report on if you're a company? By a show of hands. Let's see. Okay, so still very limited. That's good to see. Okay, that's then would love to then hear you from the questions so that you can come in later. But let's maybe then talk about some of the solutions, but also maybe some of the challenges that we see when we're implementing converged and harmonized indicators on the ground. Anne, do you want to share a little bit your views on some of the key challenges and some of the maybe the solutions also you are working on?
Maybe I can react to your question, and the lack of answer is that I think there is a convergence between people who know the subjects. But unfortunately, we are really far from having everyone on board, and especially corporates, but farmers as well, everybody. But typically with corporates, most of them have not made the link between carbon and soil. Not yet. And every day we have discussions with them. They want carbon for Scope 3 decarbonization, but soil is not the subject. And they didn't get so far that agroecology, regenerative agriculture and carbon are linked, and regenerative agriculture is the solution. So there is still a huge amount of work to pass the message. This is for corporates, and with the field at the moment, I want to be clear, the year was catastrophic for agriculture, especially in France. And this is not the time. Even cooperatives that were really engaged in our movement and that have done a lot for transition, this year it's catastrophic, so they can't go on because there is no cash anymore. So, and really the first question everybody asks us is, for corporates, how do I convince my suppliers? And the suppliers and the farmers say, which value will I get from this? So the key challenge is money, and how we finance this transition and how we create value with the services that are produced by the farmers to make it happen. So I'm convinced indicators is almost not the subject anymore because science has done the job. So we know it. Now we need practical data from the field to help farmers make a secure transition and reduce the risk. And then we need to share the risk financially between all stakeholders. And this really, for me, is the key message I want to pass, is that the theory is okay. Now we need to go to practice and have results happen in the field and show that it's possible even for farmers that have not much money or are really far from the transition yet, but we can take them and support them and get the results.
So we need more positive business cases. Yes. What about you, Adrienne?
I share your point of view, Anne. It's exactly that. I think that it's a question of value, that's sure. And I think that you have three key actors, okay? The farmer, the supplier, and the corporate. There are three. I think that the farmer, it's impossible that the farmer pay for that. It's impossible. So the farmers, I think he can offer the transparency about his impact. You know, he pays the transparency. The supplier is in the middle, so he have to negotiate with the corporate the good price for sustainable raw materials. So they want sustainable raw materials over the world. They want sustainable raw materials on. We are talking about vine, but it's rapeseed, beetroots, wheat, everywhere. Cotton. They need sustainable production. If they want sustainable production with key metrics, with outcomes, they need to pay this kind of production. So I think the farmer, the price of transparency, okay? The supplier needs to negotiate, to be in the middle, and the corporate to pay the good price.
And what will help do that, and I think it's important, is that to help suppliers do the job, to have government legislation, public policy, whatever, harmonized the types of demands that corporates will pass on to suppliers, because today they have multiple types of demands to address, because everyone has his own framework for carbon, for whatever, and so it's more complicated for suppliers to do the job and support the farmers and collect data, etc., etc. So the last issue that needs to be tackled is this mandatory application of frameworks that is still pending.
Thank you, Anne. That is a very important point that was also a little bit tackled in the previous roundtable. I'm standing up because to signify from the audience if you have any questions, I would like to share your remarks. This is the time, maybe because the mic are not working well. The best is actually to come here closer. So don't be shy. And while some of you decide if they want to ask any questions, I just want to revert back what Anne was saying about the need for harmonized metrics also from legislations. And we know that the EU Soil Monitoring Directive is, for example, a very good step, and the CSRD is another step of transparency. And I can invite you, and pleasure to share, we did actually map those 10 key core indicators across voluntary and mandatory standard setting and reporting frameworks. And guess what? The only one where there's a lot of consensus is the climate one. So it's about reduction of greenhouse gas emissions and sequestration of carbon in soils. The one on water, biodiversity, or even farmer livelihoods are very much less mature and less asked for in these frameworks. But that's exactly what we need to advocate for. And for example, that's what we at the World Business Council do. Any questions from the audience? Any remarks that you want to share from your personal experience? Please come.
Hello. I can hear myself. That's horrible.
No, go.
I have a question. When you have a monocrop like grapes or cotton, right?
I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, maybe you might not have to come.
I'm here. Sorry. When you have a monocrop like grapes or cotton, it's relatively straightforward to have a measurement system that can show improvement. But if you're using cereals, which a lot of are, which are a rotation crop, it's much more difficult for the farmer to demonstrate their progress, because depending on where you are in the cycle, you get different results. They can give me, for instance, very low carbon grain, but that's because the 2 cycles before were very carbon intensive. How do you manage that? I think that's one of the. I would never put my hand up and say we've got alignment. That's one of the reasons.
I think you have an answer too, but. It's long. It's a long time. We need to monitor it for a long time, for 5 years, 6 years. It's not. It's impossible to have a change in 1 year. It's not possible. But sometimes you can see something on the life, on the soil life, really fast. Not for the carbon. That's right. But for the soil life, you can see something really fast. So I think that it's a long change. And that's why we need all the stakeholders for that.
And yes.
To complete, we're convinced that only a mix of practice and outcome-based indicators will help support this transition, because obviously, as you say, there is a time issue. You can't see the results straightforward. However, with practice-based indicators, you can still monitor that you're in the right direction. And also with the financing solutions, we work with all our partners to try to build a collective financing system which will mix practice-based financing solutions and result-based financing solutions, so that you can basically finance the transition and the risk and share the risk, and then you can get additional value for the results. But we need to separate and have complementary approach to be able to tackle that.
And maybe probably
we need a strong baseline at the beginning, I think.
No, and to complement what you said, for sure, for crop rotations, that's why coalitions of actors exist. That there is no thing as of a regenerative potato or regenerative barley in itself. It's about a full farm that has shifted to more regenerative farming practices, and that means that the whole rotations can benefit from that. But that is definitely one of the key challenges, and you can maybe hear from some of the actors that are there that actually effectively build those coalitions to collectively offtake from a number of farms their products. We might have, I want to then turn to Anne and Adrienne for their last remarks. Is there anyone who wants to share a very quick last question? Yes, we have one over here. Please come here, come closer.
Hello, my name is Guldul Nara, and I'm the CEO of ARM Extended for regenerative agriculture. I think we also should not forget that it's more a remark than a question, but I really like what you shared here today. I think we also need to not forget that there are different discussions at the country level between the countries for Article 6. For the voluntary carbon emissions exchanges between the countries, and it's not so CSRD. It's good, but actually there are lots of things happening already at this level, and I think agriculture today represents only 1% of the international exchanges of carbon removal. And should we integrate agriculture as a solution for carbon removal, this is also the work that we do actually there at the level of UNFCCC, and it's also important to propose these discussions to these levels, and to state that regenerative agriculture is definitely a solution. It's a huge solution for carbon removal. It can cover 1/3 of our emissions, so we struggle for that, and happy to exchange and collaborate.
Thank you so much for sharing and for reminding us also from the carbon certification guidelines that is happening now in the EU. I think that's, it's an important remark, but one that might also trigger. We're almost at time. I think, Anne, maybe you want to just briefly respond to her and share your closing remarks, and then I'll hand it over to her.
Very briefly, this is a huge point, actually, but today there is a gap in legislation on how you can add up the financing solutions without carbon and with carbon. And today corporates are really scared of making it wrong, so it's basically as a pause because we don't have the solution, but this is definitely a key issue to address. So if policymakers are here, we can work on it.
But maybe corporate can help, because as they source everywhere in the world, they can help to have the same framework everywhere. You know, it's really interesting that.
No, thank you for thank you so much for reminding us, Adrienne. And this is also, for example, part of my everyday job is as representing businesses to call for alignment and harmonization of metrics, and to share that we need this level playing field across countries. And so that there is an important for the corporate players here in the room. You are playing an important role here in advocating for harmonized metrics and frameworks out there. So I think we're getting to a close. So thank you so much for listening in and for your remarks. Please come and see Adrienne and Anne if you have any questions, or myself if you have any questions. And I wish you a very pleasant and continuous World Living Soil Forum. Thank you.
Thank you.